welcome to Place Africa. Today we have for you a great woman with huge experiences. Born and raised between Mali and Senegal, she is a storyteller. She publishes tales and organizes artistic events for children through Falia. She also designed popular education programs to reach out women and children. She is also the chair of the Board of Trust Africa and ACI Baobab. She is also one of the coordinator of African Rising for Justice, Peace, and Dignity. She is also well experienced in facilitating international meetings, youth engagement, design, implementation, and evaluation of trainings programs to promote human rights and especially women's rights. Also member of the African Feminist Forum and the Pair-On Collective, she has served on the board of directors of the Urgent Action Fund for Women in Africa. Mrs. Toure Coumba, welcome to Place for Africa, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Estelle. Very glad to be with you.
Thank you, thank you. And also thank you to all our participants. We will have a question time. So if you are there, so kindly leave your question and we'll discuss about it later. So in 1960, most of sub-Saharan African countries gained their international sovereignty after a long period of colonization. So that period or that year seems to sum up the independence of those countries. But question relating to the perpetuation of colonial domination in many other forms still exist when having a look at the continent and even in other parts of the world. Even human rights are still being questioned in this 21st century. And we know that many civil organizations and actors are raising their voices today to speak out against this social injustice that we have all over the world.
Yeah.
So with you, Mrs. Toure Coumba, we'll be talking about the liberation movement in Africa. And most importantly, we will be talking about the role for African women, or the role that African women have in this period. And also we'll be talking about the women that you yourself you call invisible giants. So briefly, that's what we'll be talking about today. Thank you once again.
Wonderful. I'm glad to have this conversation with you today.
Yeah, also glad. So my first question, as I was saying it, you are an artist, a writer, a storyteller, a human rights activist. So all this commitment, where do you gain it from? Or where does it come from, and what is your driving force?
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm a coordinator, one of the coordinator for a movement, Africans Rising for Peace, Justice, and Dignity. And that movement is built on the understanding that we are far from done when you talk about liberation. We know that the independence struggles, got in the 60s, really at its peak with independence for all of these countries, so many countries in the African continent. And even later, the changes, the big wins of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, or back, in the 60s, in the civil rights movement. All of those things are amazing wins, but we know that they are not the end of the struggle for African liberation. The reason is that we know that we come from a very, very, far and long way, and we still have a long, long way to go, So that's just to speak to the context that you were saying earlier, that still today there's so much that to be done. But we have to understand how far we've come, from people who, before scientists and even, religious group, used to discuss or certify that we are not human, to a place where we can vote or organize ourselves and have our own countries. It's a very, very long way to come. So that's the main thing that I would say about that. About my own engagement, I would say that I'm just trying to do my part. I'm just trying to make sure that the privilege that I have, that I can use it to make sure that more, I guess, more people like me can also, live in dignity. That's what that's what I would say. The inspiration is simple. It comes just from people around me. You said I'm an artist, I'm a writer. In my own judgment, I'm not that big. I'm just doing what I can. Telling stories is part of my job as a parent to my own children. Of course, I've done it long before having children, and well, it's now to my own benefit that I have many stories, to tell. Yes, and my work with Africans Rising, it gives me more, of an opportunity. I take it almost as a privilege to support people and movement who are working for peace, for justice. Yes, that's really what I can say, because I have a hard time with this question. Where is the drive from? What sparked it? Because I don't have no big bang, no big things. It seems so normal to me that if we are somewhere and we see things, that we do what we can. And that's what I've learned growing up. That's what I've seen my parents and my mentors do, including those who are not even involved in organized, I want to say, associations or, civil servant, etc. It's just how you function as a human being who can sense and have empathy with other people, and use what you have. I think the question should be turned around, really. My question would be, how does one person not do something when you see what is going on? How does I don't know this number, the 26 richest person of the world that own as much as half of the world, how do they hang out and stay there and sleep and go without actually just splitting at least what they have in half and give it to the rest? That should be for me the question, rather than like what motivates you.
Okay. So talking about all the activities that you've been involved in, can you give us some few examples of how valuable your contribution is for all those people that you are working for?
That's I have to say that question is quite uncomfortable for me to respond to, but I will try. Um, First of all, I don't see myself as an expert in really anything. I'm a storyteller, and that one I own and I like it. I love it. So that's why I do it. And I think that in telling stories, we can inspire people, and we can also put teachings in stories, and carry values to people. So that's, I guess, the main one. And I don't feel like I'm doing as much as I could do in that as an artist in a story. I feel like I am pregnant with many stories, images, films, and books that should come out if we really I put enough time to it. But I feel like what I can be proud of, I guess, is the possibility of putting light and shedding light on people who have done great things, who are doing great things, and who may not be under, the fires of projectors. They have no, statue built for them, or even sometime nobody recognize nowhere what they've done. But they are really the backbone of movements and movements building. And what I'm talking about, goes from the past to today. You're talking about colonialism, post-colonialism to today. All of these movements that we hear about and talk about had so many people that no one knows their names. And many of them are women. And I am trying, while I meet certain women now, and I see how much they do and how much they give, to at least put, somewhere what they've done. And I guess it's mainly for future generations, so that we don't have to struggle like we do today. We have to dig to find the women in the anti-apartheid movement. Their name is not out there all the time. We have to dig to find the women in the civil rights movements. We have to dig to find all the women that contributed to the independences, or those who fought against colonialism, even to have their names. You have to really look for them before you find it. And even sometimes you don't find everything, just small pieces of stories. So I guess that would be maybe the one thing that I would be very, very proud of, and of trying to still do, is to collect stories of invisible giants, as I call them.
So before talking about those women that have been forgotten during the past period, I just want to know, you used to say that my feminism is rooted in my Africanity, or that you are an integral feminist. Can you, I don't know, give us a brief understanding about your feminism?
Yes, it's interesting. To me, again, nothing too deep. To me, I equate feminism with that sense of justice that I referred before, that level of empathy. I guess that generosity, and that idea that we can make change, and that we can make sure that people are seen for who they are, no matter, what, gender, race, class, sexual orientation, anything. And that is where I place feminism, and that we see the interaction between, different types of oppression, and how it works together to marginalize certain people. So feminism, I used to be called feminist before even I knew what it meant, really. Just as a word that somebody can use against you. And I don't know, I kind of just shrugged it away. If it was an insult, I didn't know what it was really. But understanding and growing into it took me to, the type of feminism that doesn't even try to justify itself. That's what I'm basically saying. Mariama Ba, who's one of the Senegalese writer, is one of the women that, as a young woman or a girl, I would say, maybe adolescent, I've seen an expert on TV saying, oh, if defending women's rights and wanting women to have, their rights is what it is to be feminist, then I'm a feminist. She was giving that example, and I looked at it and I was just like, oh, so it's okay, I can be a feminist in some way. But I think even further than that now, I've gone past even that, because at least she used to say if. I'm a feminist, really, no if, no buts. I don't feel that it's necessary to explain or to qualify even, my feminism. And I understand and I know that, being African, being Pan-Africanist, has no, I want to say, no contradiction with being feminist for me.
Thank you. So let's say that when you were talking about all the period that really marked the continent, the African continent, talking about colonialism, independence, and post-colonialism, where do you think that African women can stand?
You know, African women have always been there, all the time. Again, that's what I'm really, fighting to also make sure it's seen. There are no struggles on this continent that African women are not part of. It doesn't even matter which area or which time or which type of work you take, the fight, for, the environment, today, and the climate, crisis. Women are there today, but they are there today as much that they've been there when, in Guinea-Bissau, including to take arms and be, in the field to fight Portuguese colonialism. The same way that today, in the movement for Africans Rising movement, I am one of the coordinator, and there are women, in the coordinating collective, and everywhere at every level of Africans Rising. There have been also women everywhere in the first formations of, African movement, whether it's, intellectuals or students or workers' unions. If you look, you will see that the women were there. What is not there many times is the importance or the light to be put on them as, the most important people or the leaders, etc. But they have not done, less than men. And that needs to change in our movements currently. We need to make sure that the contribution of women are seen.
Do you think that there is any difficulties preventing women to be seen as actors or, yeah?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we don't want to use big words like this patriarchy, but the main thing, the invisibility of women come from the fact that women and men generally will diminish a woman's importance in a particular action. So people would tend, when they land the mic and make programs or interviews, they would generally, give the floor to the men. If there is a representation that needs to be done, if there are opportunities for people to do something or go somewhere, generally it would be, the men that would go. So then the records will go down as them being, more visible. It doesn't mean that the women are doing less. The other part is just that there are parts of the work that we do that is just not as valued, as other parts of the world. Like you take any movement, any organizing, it takes, people putting things together. We say organizing, somebody needs to figure out who will be where, do what, at what time. Somebody have to feed people. Somebody have to coordinate. All those secretariat work, all of the backbone work, a lot of the time are done by women. And without that, no movement could stand. But those, work as almost, I guess, in also just our life, our daily life, the work of caring for people, the work, sometime in the house, etc. Those roles are seen as almost nothing. It's invisible, even though it sustains everybody. So I think a lot of the time, many of the women, even in the political parties here, if you look at it, a lot of women voting, mobilizing, organizing, everything, but they are not generally the one that would be, when comes the time for recognition, for having a special, spot somewhere, they are not the one that I've thought of. So I think that is part of what prevent, push women or prevent them to be visible. And of course, we have to recognize that we struggle with sexism and some misogyny, even in our own movements. Women are subject to violence, to rape, to different things that makes it harder. I mean, parents don't like their young, women or girls to join because they're worried about what could happen to them. Not only because, sometimes you are facing a hostile state and so on, but even within the group that you are part of, you still have, dangers lurking.
So we were saying it at the beginning, you are one of the coordinators of African Rising, which focuses on social inequalities on the African continent. And you're also leading a campaign called Freedom. So referring to many other movements all over the world, also talking about human rights and also referring to the International Charter of Human Rights, don't you think that in this 21st century, we shouldn't be talking again about human rights? It should be obvious for everyone. So why are we still having all these movements around? And so what do you think
Yes, I
about
mean,
this?
we should be much further than than where we are, where we are today. As human being, sending, I don't know, machines to, to other planets. If you look at how far we've come in terms of, scientific accomplishment, it's quite puzzling and shocking, the level of backwardness that we function under in terms of relationships between human beings. That's for sure. Um, we we should, today Africans Rising have, many campaigns that we are working on. Freedom is one of them. We are saying with COVID-19, with everything that is going, we are asking, African governments, African presidents to use their grace capacity to let people out of jails, especially journalists and political prisoners. It makes no sense to put them in jail, but even, so many prisoners are in jails, for petty crimes, or sometimes for just not having somebody who can speak for them. And knowing the conditions in the prisons, it makes no sense to keep so many people in. Of course, we're saying anyone who doesn't present a threat to their community, particularly to women and children, etc., need to be let go. And people need to take those bold steps in this particular moment. That's what one campaign. We've been really also working with, a group of feminists that have just put out a statement called Africa post COVID-19 economic recovery, a feminist perspective. But basically, it really what there's more than 500, feminist women are signing to and saying to, yes, the special envoy of the AU, but also to all of the world leaders, the African leaders, of course, but also all of the world leaders, is that, it's about time that as humanity, we grow out of this, the economic model madness that we are in. That Africa be the place of extraction and be the place that supports the rest of the world, because things are taken away from us. But we are reminding them that African women then in the end are the ones who are really carrying the whole burden, because that burden that is taken away from Africa is passed on to the women of Africa. So we are saying we don't need, to stay in the same system. We don't need more debt. We don't, what we need is complete cancellation of this debt. What we need is reparation. What we need is a different way of interacting with each other. We have another petition, just a letter to the Queen of England, one of the biggest empire, colonial empire on earth, to say, just take, the courage to face the wrongdoings that you've done to the world, so that we can change it. Because as long as we don't recognize what has been done in the past, of course, we cannot recognize how we are functioning today. That is just a continuation in different forms of what was done in the past. We are saying to, European countries, US, people in China, to start treating, Africans, whether they are citizens of their countries or they're migrants there or they're just passing through, to start treating them as the human being that they are. And like you say, this is so basic. We shouldn't be discussing this at this point, but this is where we are. So we have to talk about this. It's not something that we are interested or happy about talking. It's just that we don't have a choice, but put it out, because this is where we are today, sadly, in this world.
Do you think that with the new movement, Black Lives Matter, do you think that we could really end the racism against Black American African?
I think that, the movements for Black lives, including, Black Lives Matter today, are part of a continuum of movements and people who have been struggling, individuals, organizations, coalitions that have been trying, for centuries. So what is going on today is part of that. And yes, I have, a lot of hope, but I know that we are far, far from from any finish line. We need to be clear about that. And we know that we need much, much more help from every single body we can get it from. Of course, all Africans on the continent and all Africans in the diaspora, but also every single person who believes in justice, who is a human being that consider other people as human. We need their help and support to change and shift this world. Not only for Africans, yes, we need it for Africans, but for me, the rationale is beyond that. It is that, I guess with COVID-19, I just hope that somehow people who could not see it before can see that as humanity, we are one. And it doesn't matter if we leave big chunks of humanities, whether because they're Black or they're women or, for any reason, whether they're because they're poor or they have a different sexual orientation. I don't know, whatever reason we use to cast out some human being and not treat them as human, not give them the possibilities and the access to what they need to live and to thrive, we create problems and dangers for all of humanities, because we know that COVID-19 is one, but there will be other things. There will be other viruses. There will be other issues that challenges us. So it's better that we take care of the whole human family, so that when things comes at us, we can face it together. So that is really where I place this struggle.
So looking at or referring to your feminist side and looking at the body of your organization, African Rising, it seems that you try to mainstream gender parity. So is it based on a system of quota, or how do you do that?
Yes, I mean, I would say that thanks to, the founders of Africans Rising, and to, since, Arusha and the validation conference that happened there, women, fought to make sure that this is, a crucial part of Africans Rising. And I'm just following that I want to say that tradition, and myself being a feminist, of course, I'm so happy to be able to do that, to have that opportunity to do so. Yes, in our papers and what we write, we are clearly saying that it is one of our pillar in terms of our actions to make sure that equality, women's rights, and all of those things are part of what we do. Building the solidarity with movements that are working in that field is part of what we do. But also in the way that we function, we have it in our bylaws to make sure that, our coordinating collective, which is an elected body, we said that we wanted to make sure that we had at least 50% of women on it. Of course, we when we did the last election, we got even more women than like we were kind of looking at ourselves thinking, okay, we need to get a little, few more men in here. Like, Africans basically voted for women on the coordinating collective of Africans Rising, but this is part of our way and our functioning. And of course, we have a long way to go, because we operate in a sector where these are still struggles that people are going through. So we have to make an extra effort to make sure that movements that are members of Africans Rising see that they have to be in solidarity with women's movement, the same way that the women's movements have always been in solidarity with any movement for democracy, for health, or for the environment. So it's a work in progress. We are not there yet, but we know that this is something that we need to continue working and fighting. I think for Africans Rising, or for any other organization, the first step is the awareness, to know that this is a necessity. And then the next step is, what do you put in place to make sure you can work to make the changes that you need.
So you made mention previously to Mariam Abba as a writer, and she actually wrote a book called Such a Long Letter, where she described inequalities in, let's say, private sphere or marital life. When she was talking about discrimination women suffer. So I just want to know, do you think that this inequality in the private sphere still exists, persists, or there's been a change?
Yes, of course, it's still there. I mean, look at the numbers in terms of just the violence against women. There doesn't come a day when you don't hear about rape, about killings of women in the private space. Women, of course, we talk about struggle of democracy, of young people being unsafe in countries where you have presidents who want power and stay there. But women, are unsafe even in their own houses sometimes. So it starts there. For me, this is also where our feminism starts. We have to change what is happening to women in private space. We cannot let that just be there in the private space. What is, of course, as a feminist, for us, what is private is as important as what is public. So we have to challenge and make sure that our leaders and people who really are working for democracy, for Pan-Africanism, whether they're men or women, are also fighting to make sure that women are safe in those private space. To me, there is still so much work to do. And this is not limited, of course, to Africa. It's everywhere in the world.
But do you think that women themselves have a role to play to free themselves from this discrimination and all those struggles that we are talking about?
Of course. I mean, nobody will free us but us. And women have been playing big roles in that. I mean, if you and I are, sitting here today speaking, it's because some women have, dared to challenge some of these status quos in places where, it was not an option for women to be in certain places. So to me, some people have done their work, have pushed it to a place, and it is our role to push it further for our daughters and granddaughters. It's almost like a relay race in some way. We have to push and to bring the changes. We have to raise children that will act differently towards us and towards women and men. Yes, that's really, we have a big role. We are already playing it, but we need more people to play it with us.
So one of your book, Invisible Giants, begin with the following statement, and I quote, "May attention finally be paid to these women beings who know how to tame almost everything. May light finally be shed on these jumpers, a very special coming that remained for too long invisible." So what really sparked the need in you to lead this project, Invisible Giants?
Yeah, I have to say, the Invisible Giants really, I took it from Fire Rose Toure from Selma, Alabama. The first time I saw her organize this conference and brought women who were part of the civil rights movement and recognized them. And the only thing we knew, I knew of the civil rights movement in 1996 was the, speech, I have a dream of, Martin Luther King. We didn't know who were these women in the civil rights movement. And I was just like, wow, all of these people who've done so much to make this movement and invisible giants. And it just stuck with me. And since then, it's like a veil that was taken off my eyes, and I start seeing them everywhere. Because yes, you can talk about the past and how people have done things, but then if you transfer it in the present and you look at people, you see, wow, look at what they do today. And, tranquil and doing it in, with no big, show, but I want to say saving people's lives daily, supporting new generations of people, teaching, tending to, organizing, doing so much. And I see them and I recognize them. So I decided to make it really a whole program and make it part of my work to look for them and to put light on them.
Amazing. So before concluding our exchange, what could be your advice to those young women, African women working around to try to challenge all this struggle and who are working toward the development of Africa?
You know, I am very, very inspired by many young women who dare to speak a different language, dare to live a different life, do not are not bound or attached by certain ways anymore. I love the fact that they stand for themselves, they stand for others, and I don't really have advice. What I have is really to say, you know, whatever you need to do and you need support on, ask for help, ask for support, look, around and find the people who may have done, things before you that might be able to lend also their voice, and make you even more visible, because that's, to me, that's the role we have. We really need to make sure that there is a serious intergenerational support and dialogue moving forward. So I admire and I love what I see of young women who dare, and I am always ready whenever I can, to be of support, to give visibility when I can, or whatever is needed, is what we can give. So yes, I'm just happy to see it. Happy to see people like you doing what you are doing.
Thank you so much. So let's have a look at the question that the participant has for us. So the first question is that, do you think that young African women are still so powerful like the women in the African history?
Yes, I think powerful most of the time is seen. It's backward that it's seen. This just this week, there's been several deaths of people who were part of the civil rights movement. One of them was very close to my heart, Reverend City Vivian. But I just want to say that people today that everybody praise, they have medals and everyone talk about them. They didn't look so powerful uh, at the time. So yes, sometimes I hear people saying, "Oh no, the young generation, or they don't care about this, or they're not feminists, or they're not as engaged. They only care about making money, etc., etc." And I don't agree. I don't agree because I don't think that it's never been a time, whether it was during the colonial time or the anti-apartheid movement or independence time, there was never a time where all young people or all young women were all engaged and wanted to do something to change things. No, there were some who dare to get out of the design path. There were some that had the capacity to pull people together and work, with them for change. And there are still some today. There were some in the past, there's still some today. And there are many today that needs to be supported. And you don't need uh, uh, everybody to be ready. You need some people to be ready, and then once they push through, when it becomes safer, more people will get in.
So another question is relating to how to achieve equality when we know that in African society, women are traditionally assigned secondary role relating to caring, assisting roles, and so on.
Yes,
How do we achieve equality?
I think equality is not a choice in terms of equality in access, equality to justice, equality for I want to say for joy. That's what, when we talk about equality, that's what we are trying to talk about. We want women, or anybody actually, to just be able to be treated, as human, and live in dignity and get to their full potential. Now, yes, there are traditional roles, and this is not specific to Africa. It's global. It's been done in other places. You know, changes of roles are happening. You know, the limits on around gender and saying this is what a man should look like and what a woman should look like. Those are changing, and it's not anymore, you know, the same. So we have to push and accept that those changes happen. The other piece for me is those roles that are caring roles that are just effective to women. Change can come also in making them valuable. You know, when the care work becomes valuable, when people are respected for doing it, when people are getting you know, whatever they need from doing it, I tell you, men will do it. We talk about cooking, for example. That's the simplest one that I can take. You know, they will tell you in many of the places, you know, that I know and come from, oh no, a man can cook, shouldn't touch the pots. You know, they could even, you know, become important in everything. But the moment that being a chef is something so important that you not only make money but get status of it, then you get, you know, men to be chef. You know, but they stay African now. They just didn't become, you know, white, but they're African and they're chef because value is given to that. So care work itself needs to be valued. It's part of what you know, makes us human. It shouldn't be something that is just put on the side and not considered. That's what I have to say to that. But people have to have the choice to decide what they feel comfortable in and what they want to do, whether they're women or men. So sometimes I think those roles are depriving, you know, those roles when it's, you know, made in a certain way, they depriving, you know, men for even, you know, enjoying certain things that they might, you know, want to do.
Do you think that feminism is discussed differently in Africa and in the Western?
As an African feminist, I see a clear connection, clear link between, you know, the oppressions of women, the oppression of Black people, the oppression of poor people. You know, people with different, you know, sexual orientation. I see the link between everything. I don't separate things. The truth is that maybe in the way that, you know, feminism was, I guess, presented or practiced in certain parts of the world, where maybe some people have less of a view of the relationship between different races, or maybe the privilege of being maybe white didn't allow for them to see that part of, okay, yes, being a woman is an issue, but being a Black woman is an issue, so that you don't only fight for yourself, but you also fight for the sisters, and because they're part of it. So I think this is where, you know, the split happened. In some ways, we as African feminists bring a different lens. When you live also in a country on the continent that is still, you know, struggling with, you know, neocolonialism, you bring a different lens again. When you live, you know, in a rural area or something, you bring another level. So I think it is the different levels, and the more faces you can see, the further I think you get into really the analysis of what's going on, and also the possibilities of what needs to change.
So another question is relating to your work as writer, and especially the tales that you used to write. So how do you think we should improve in the indication of African children at school and at home?
Yes, I mean, we have so much work. This is, for me, this is the beginning of everything. We have to reclaim the education of our children and make sure that we build, serious curricula that really teach our children to not only who they are, but also the real, history. We need to make sure that our languages are used in our schools. We need to make sure values that we have are put in there. There's so much to be done in the education sector, but not only educating our own children, our own African children. We need to educate, children in China, children in Europe and everything, to make sure that they also know about Africa and Africans.
Thank you so much. We are at the end of this interview, and thank you for enlightening us on today's topic and bringing up a remarkable view on what we just discussed today. So I hope our viewers also really enjoyed this moment with us, and we are glad to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for taking this time.